What's going on, guys? Today we have a very exciting day started. We're going to try to start the International. I ordered some parts for it. They're on the way, so I figured while we're waiting on them, we might as well try to start this thing in the condition it is now. All right, so for those of you who don't know yet, it is a 1956 International. The only thing I've done to it so far is I've hooked the battery up and I've just got it charging, but we're gonna get the hood off and see what we got to do here. So again, the only thing I did was just put the battery charger on it last night. So it should be charged enough here. Go ahead and take the air cleaner off. It's one of those oil bath deals. There we go. All right, so far I've been trying to turn it over by hand and it freely turns over. So that's a good sign. I don't see anything very obvious from the outside except for this cover. There's a loose screw right there. Not a big deal. Man, that's pretty gummed up. All right, we're gonna start with some carb cleaner because this thing is completely bound up. It's really seized up in there. All right, yeah, I'm gonna put some carb cleaner on that. All right, so to do this, we're gonna have to get power to the coil here. So we just need this wire. We've got a new fuse box coming in, so we're just gonna cut this back here. That way we can run some power over to our battery, just to see if we can temporarily start this thing. So I'm gonna need some clippers. Okay, so we're just gonna borrow this wire right here. Strip it down. I've just got one of these little prong terminals on here. All right, so this will go to the positive side of the battery. We're gonna wait because obviously we don't wanna blow the coil up. So wait until we're ready to start it. I got new clamps put on the battery cables. All the plug wires are securely fastened. Have no idea what the firing order on this thing is. All right, we also need to figure out where the positive side of the starter solenoid is. I believe it's this one. Find out here in a minute. All right, I'm gonna make sure we're in neutral before something stupid happens. Okay, so we are in fact in neutral. We'll see if this is our positive for the starter solenoid. All right, guys, here's the predicament here. So I got the starter solenoid off of there and I tried to run power just to bypass the solenoid to the starter and nothing's happening. So probably gonna have to take the starter out and see if we can pull that out of there, and maybe there's some stuff wrong inside the starter. Okay, so you can see my problem. There's a bolt on top of there that I can't get to because of this manifold being in the way. So I'm pretty much gonna have to take all of this manifold off, including the carburetor and everything, just so I can get to the top bolt. So yeah, stay tuned. All right, I've got the starter removed and I've got all the parts that are inside of it taken out of it. It's pretty easy to do. The bolt that goes through the center of this little arm here was stuck, so I had to pound that out with a hammer. But you can see everything is just absolutely just gunked up with crud. So I'm gonna try my best to save this starter. If not, we might have to buy some new internals or just buy a starter altogether, depending on what's gonna be the best as far as cost goes. Even the solenoid is in pretty bad shape. So I got a new solenoid right here. And then I've also got some brushes and stuff for the inside of the starter. So if we can get this clean and fixed up, then we'll be able to get this thing going. But if I was to guess, I'd say this is probably the reason that the truck was parked in the first place, because the starter was not working. All right, so here's what we're dealing with. I got some of the parts cleaned up, and the brush kit that came in is way too big, so we're gonna try to back this down a little bit on the back side, probably have to drill a new hole in there, and we're gonna see if we can make this work because it's not the correct size as what we need in there. So we're gonna go ahead and see if we can make this thing work. All right, guys, so sorry if there's a bunch of rain in the background. It's going pretty crazy right now, but so we got this assembled back together. I was able to use the brush that was the wrong size. I was able to grind it down to the right size, put a new hole in it, and everything should work properly now. I have jumper cables running from a battery on another vehicle in here, so don't try this at home, but if we connect this here and touch this to the ground. Okay, that is working. All right, so now we're gonna have to disassemble this a little bit because we still have to put our little fork back in there with the new starter solenoid. All right, guys, so I think I've got everything figured out now. The solenoid was causing some issues. I had to strip everything apart inside of it and just resolder some connections, get everything cleaned up. And the issue was the starter was not spinning, but the gear was moving forward. So now we should be able to see the gear plunge forward and the starter start to spin. All right, that's what we want to see. So now we can go ahead and try to mount this thing back up. It's raining pretty hard right now, so I'm gonna wait a minute. All right, guys, we're taking a brief pause from the action here. It started raining pretty hard, and I'm wanting to get this video done for you guys because I told you I'd do it before I leave for vacation. I'm about determined to start this thing up. So even if I have to order parts for a carburetor rebuild before I leave for vacation, I'm gonna try my best to get this thing fired up. So it's been over the course of several days because we've had a lot of rain. But if you're this far along, thank you for watching. If you liked the video so far, make sure you give it a like. Once the rain calms down, I'm gonna go back out there and try to get this thing fired up. Still waiting. It's raining like crazy right now, so we're just gonna give it some time. Okay, so I've got the starter back in there. Now I just have to put this exhaust slash intake manifold back on. I have a new gasket for that. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab the gasket and get to putting that back on there. All right, guys, so to fire this thing up, we're gonna have to run one wire to the battery from this terminal right here to the positive side of the battery, and then to the ignition coil from this post. And then we don't need the accessory, obviously. And then this post up here looks like it is the starter post. So we're gonna run from here to the starter solenoid, from here to the ignition coil, and then from here to a 12-volt battery source. So I've got the little downpipe for the exhaust mounted back up. Got the carburetor all done up, even though I'm going to be using starting fluid for it. I've got my power to my coil. I think we're ready to go ahead and try to start this thing. Alright guys, so first things first, we were checking the spark plug here because we didn't have spark. So confirm there's no spark. However, we are getting power down here to the 12 volt terminal on the distributor. So now we have to figure out if it's a points issue or what. So we're going to pop this cap off and see what we can figure out. Alright guys, so I'm going to have to switch out the points and the condenser in there more than likely. They're cheap parts. I'm not sure if it's going to fix it or not, but you can see clearly that the spark is not arcing across the point set. I tried adjusting it, I tried cleaning it up. It's not going to work, so I got a new set of points and a new condenser. So we're going to go ahead and throw that in. Alright guys, so we now have spark jumping across the points, so I don't know which one it was, either dirty points or a condenser, but again, they're both very cheap. So let's go ahead and put the cap on and get the plugs put back in, and this thing should have spark. Alright guys, so I was trying to get this thing actually running, set up a little tank here on the ground, and I put in a new inline fuel filter just before the carburetor, and no matter what I tried, it wouldn't fill up with fuel. So I'm assuming it's a bad fuel pump. That's why I got one of the clear fuel filters. Okay, so just to recap, this guy said that this thing wouldn't start forever. He tried everything. I rebuilt the starter on it, which that was obviously a problem because when I first put power to it, it wouldn't even do anything. Went ahead and changed that gasket. That wasn't mandatory, but since I had to take it off to get the starter removed, I had to change that gasket. Cleaned the carburetor a little bit, and then over here just put in some new points and a new condenser, and this thing fired right up. So now I just need this fuel pump. I might get a block off plate and just run an electric fuel pump. They're just better in my opinion anyways, and the future of what I want this thing will require an electric fuel pump anyways, so might as well do that now. Okay, so that's my normal procedure on how I kind of troubleshoot things and see, you know, what needs to be done to get those old trucks started or old cars started that have been sitting there forever. It's all pretty much the same. I mean, the tractor was the exact same way. The International that I just started, it had starter issues just like the tractor, but the starter issue was a little bit different. It's really just knowing, you know, kind of how those parts operate and knowing like how to see problems. Like that brush was completely missing inside of the starter on this one. So that was my first clue that there was a problem with the starter. Well, my first clue, I guess, was that it wasn't working. Then the ignition components, it's all about knowing how to test electrical and make sure that you have power to each of the parts where you're supposed to have power, and then realizing why there may not be spark coming to your plugs, and learning just how to track that down. So I think the truck is going to run perfectly fine. That is something that I wasn't too sure about because it looks rough. I mean, there's gunk built up all over it, and it's just pretty rough. This is probably my favorite part about getting a new project is you bring it in, you don't know exactly what's wrong with it, because I buy everything not in working condition, except for the Mustang, obviously, but you bring it in non-working condition and you kind of troubleshoot to see if you can make it run, and that's like one of my favorite parts about this whole experience. So if you like the video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, share it with people, and make sure that you're subscribed to the YouTube channel because there's gonna be so many more updates coming for all these projects that I have going on. So I promise you guys I have the thing running by next weekend, which is my vacation, and finally today it is started. So it's not running on its own, but it started. For now, that's good enough for me. So until the next video, I'll see you guys next time.